And this one has to do with insurance. We need to make those gun owners pay for insurance. When we do, those insurance companies will raise the rate so high that no gun owner will be able to afford a gun, and we can all live happily ever after. Well, unfortunately, it's not going to quite work out that well for them. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
All right, Stephen Richardson here on Twitter leads off here. And he says here, initial and biennial forensic psychological evaluations in order to purchase and own a gun. Required liability insurance for each weapon owned. States required to have red flag laws. None of these infringe on America's Second Amendment rights, and you would be so dead wrong about that one. I talked about that in my last one, the dumb gun control argument number 2. Murdoch versus Pennsylvania. You can't price a right out of existence. If you make gun owners pay insurance on guns, the only people who will be able to afford them legally are going to be the wealthy. Don't disarm the working class, and I'll show you why he's right here when we get down the road a little bit. Gun manufacturers and gun owners should be made to carry insurance, and this is in all caps, so he's serious here, man. You have to have house insurance, car insurance, a license to get married, which is not insurance, or fish. I don't think fishing requires insurance. So why not make manufacturers and owners carry insurance? The reason why is because guns are not houses or cars or fish. It's not that hard. Gun manufacturers have immunity from lawsuits thanks to corrupt politicians. But teachers don't. Insurance companies have already said they won't cover teachers or schools for gun incidences. Why is it then that there are schools in Texas that arm teachers and are still allowed to operate? I mean, don't they have to have liability insurance? So somebody's covering them. That is nonsense. You want to make the car analogy, then make every gun owner get a license requiring adeptness at using it. Because what we need to do is make sure that our future mass shooters know how to use their guns. We also include registration in there. I don't know how that prevents people from shooting up schools, but okay. And insurance in case of accident. Honestly, think mandatory gun insurance is the best policy. Makes the responsible gun owners prove it or pay. But what about the irresponsible gun owners? They don't have to prove anything, do they? How about adding liability insurance for gun holders? Also, owning ammo is nowhere to be found in the Constitution. And as I said in dumb gun control argument number 2, that doesn't matter. It's still unconstitutional. Republicans want to arm teachers. So will they add a gun safety class to the teacher preparation programs in college? Hey, I'd be all for it. How exactly are they going to train teachers? Who's paying for the guns? Where will the gun be kept? Will liability insurance also be provided? What about ammo? I don't know. Maybe why don't you ask the schools in Texas that have been doing it for a while? These are these little barriers they think are barriers, right? They say, have they really thought about these things? But they have. I mean, Texas already has a number of schools where teachers can carry guns. I think they have them here in Oklahoma as well. I have told y'all for almost a decade now that there needs to be gun liability insurance for every single gun purchased in the U.S. I don't know why you have to insure every gun. Why not just insure the person? Every gun owner should have to qualify and purchase the insurance. It should be expensive and have strict requirements. So in other words, if the insurance companies come in and say, hey, look, I'm willing to go ahead and insure these guns here for a certain amount of money, and I think we can do it relatively cheaply, he's going to be upset. Or I'm sorry, she, anymore though, going to be upset. They're going to say, oh no, it's got to be artificially raised. We want it expensive. And why is that? Because it's designed to dissuade people from being able to buy guns. That's what makes this unconstitutional. The purpose of the liability insurance here is not to diminish gun violence. It's to raise the price of guns so much that people can't afford them anymore. And she's admitting it. Okay, so let's take their argument seriously. Let's suppose that gun insurance is coming down the pike. There's nothing we can do about it. It's there. How much is this going to cost? Well, you have to first factor in, when will it be used? Or I should say, when will the insurance company have to pay out? So let's go over a few scenarios here. Number one, let's suppose that I'm despondent. My Sooners football team got beat. I can't take it anymore. People from Texas are making fun of me. That's enough. I've decided to do myself in. So I take out my 38 and I put the sweet business into my mouth, and it's over. All right. Does the insurance company pay out in that circumstance? And most gun grabbers would say, well, no. I mean, that's suicide. Who would get the money? Well, my beneficiaries would be my family, I suppose. Whatever the case, I think that they would say, no, that's not a situation where the gun insurance company would pay out. Okay, fine. But keep in mind, that's a non-zero percentage of the times when guns are used for violence. Now, let me go ahead and go over another scenario. Let's suppose that I'm getting up and I see somebody in my kitchen and I say, oh my God, it's a robber. And I see the silhouette, I open fire, and it turns out to be my wife. Who gets paid then? She can't be paid. So who's next in line? Well, that would be me. So the insurance company is going to give me a whole bunch of money because I accidentally shot my wife? And the gun grabbers will step in and say, well, no, that's not the case. Well, that would not be covered. No, that won't be covered. All right. Suppose that I hear a noise and I find out that there is a robber trying to get into my house, and he finally busts in and he's got a knife, and being scared, I say, oh, to hell with this, and blam, blam, blam. Who gets the money then? Does he? He was breaking into my home to probably do harm to me, and the insurance company is going to give him or his family money? And the gun grabbers would say, well, no, it won't cover that. I mean, it only covers accidents. So finally, one more. Jimmy is looking to rob a liquor store, and he sees a liquor store down the road, and he goes inside, he pulls a gun, and he shoots the store owner and steals the money. Who gets paid? Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I forgot. Jimmy's not going to have insurance, will he? The only ones that will have liability insurance are the people who are responsible, the ones who went out and bought their guns legitimately. Jimmy's not going to have to do it, so he doesn't have to pay the premiums, and guess what? The insurance company doesn't have to pay out. And if you think about it, suicides, shooting a loved one by mistake, shooting an intruder, and shooting somebody in a crime probably makes up a very, very large percentage of the times when guns are used to hurt people. So this whole liability thing won't be used hardly ever. When will it be used? Well, if you go down to the target range and you accidentally shoot the dude, the instructor there, okay, it'll cover that. If you go out hunting and you accidentally shoot somebody because you think he looks like a pig, okay, it will cover that. And that's about it. So this whole thing about liability insurance, all of a sudden kicking in and paying out for all these crimes, kind of diminishes when you start to think about it, doesn't it? So how much would it cost? Well, I actually have a spreadsheet here where I try to kind of figure it out a little bit. I decided to break this between AR-15s and handguns. And the reason why is the AR-15 is this mystical weapon that everybody's all worked up about. And they think that the insurance will wipe them out. So we start off with the number of deaths. Well, we actually know that. That's around 300. And if you figure that if 300 people are killed by AR-15s, then 1,200 per year that are actually hurt or killed is probably pretty reasonable. Now, keep in mind, the number of these casualties that would actually receive a settlement is really low. as I just mentioned, the scenarios where these things, where this insurance company would kick in is relatively minor. And so the insurance companies know that. So even though there are 1,200 casualties, the insurance companies know that they're only going to be paying out a fraction of those. But let's just go ahead and pretend that they're going to pay out in 100% of all casualties. Now, how much? Well, let's say $500,000 per. Now, you might think, well, wait a minute now. They're going to be required to have $1 million, right? Well, even if they are, keep in mind, this includes casualties, which means people who shoot themselves in the foot, which are relatively cheap. So $500,000 average is probably really high. Well, that brings a total cost of $600 million. Now, let's divide that by the number of rifles, which is 20 million, which is well known, and it has a cost per rifle of $30. Put in a 5% profit margin, which is low. It should be much higher than that, and you end up with an annual premium of $31.50. Now, keep in mind, again, this assumed that every instance in which a person was killed or hurt by an AR-15 that the insurance companies would have to pay. But again, that is probably way optimistic. I think the fraction is maybe 10-20% of those. Hard to say. So in some cases, this $31.50 is artificially low, but in others, I would see that it's probably too high. Hard to say. But let's take a look at now with handguns. The number of deaths with handguns is around 20,000 per year. The number of casualties is actually well known. It's around 160,000. So I didn't have to actually surmise that one. I actually looked that one up. And the cost per injury is around $200,000 is what I figure. And why is it lower than the AR-15? Well, for two reasons. Number one, the AR-15 is more powerful, probably going to do more damage to you, which requires more medical care. And the other one is the use of the AR-15 is probably more deliberate than the handgun. And so you think about it, AR-15s are used when? Well, a lot of them have been used for these mass shootings, and certainly that's a problem. And the shooter has been very deliberate in their shooting, and so the number of deaths is actually pretty high in comparison to the number of casualties. But most importantly, because more people are being just injured and not killed, the cost per injury is going to be lower with a handgun. So that brings us to a total cost of $32 billion. However, there are 250 million handguns in the US. Therefore, the cost per gun is about $128, and that comes out to about $134 with the profit margin. Now, I know a lot of people will say that neither of these numbers is really correct. 3150 is forgetting certain things and whatever, but look at the comparison. The insurance on an AR-15 is substantially lower than that of a handgun. And the reason why is because the AR-15 is rarely ever used in crimes. Yeah, those few that it is used tend to be high profile. Okay, so we hear AR-15 all the time, but in reality, handguns are used far, far more often. And therefore, the insurance premiums on those are going to be much higher. So what's the lowdown here? Well, if you're looking for a gun and you want to buy a gun, let's say for self-protection, or maybe you want to go down to the Target range or whatever, or you just want to own a gun, damn it, it's a right, and I want to own one. You have a choice. You can pay like $300 for a handgun, and pay $134 per year to insure it, or you can pay $800 for an AR-15 and only pay $31 per year. All of a sudden, the cost of AR-15s is going to look very attractive in comparison to handguns. So you're going to see a shift in purchasing from handguns to AR-15s. I'm not sure the people who want you to buy your gun insurance understand that. But it only makes sense. The insurance companies are going to look at this and say, look, the AR-15 looks kind of scary, but the chances that we're actually going to have to pay out are really, really tiny. Therefore, we don't have to charge nearly as much. Now, a lot of people would say, well, now, wait a minute. The insurance companies are not going to break it down between handguns and AR-15s. They'll just lump all guns together. Yeah, that won't work. And the reason why is competitors will come in and say, wait, if we focus on AR-15s exclusively, then we can actually offer this insurance cheaper than the big companies. And so they'll come in and they will drive the cost of insurance for AR-15s way down. So ultimately, people forget that insurance companies are private companies. They're not charities. They're not designed as extensions of the federal government. So if you have ideas about gun control, the insurance companies are not your tools. They're going to be private companies looking to make a profit, but they're also competitive. They have to keep their costs down. Otherwise, people will buy from their competitors. Now, I know some of you will say, well, wait a minute, my premiums for my car insurance are much higher than this. But keep in mind, when an insurance company pays out on a car, they're not only paying out on the injuries, they're also paying out on the car. And you figure a car is typically around 40 grand or whatever. Yeah, the cost of settling in a car accident is substantially higher. So to compare car insurance to gun insurance is a little bit problematic in that sense. Now, who can't afford this? Well, the poor. I mean, I can afford it. If they did come in and say, hey, you got to pay out, $50 per year for every one of your AR-15s, I can afford that. The poor can't. So they're going to be dissuaded from being able to protect themselves, which the rich people don't care. I mean, it's like, whatever, it's not their problem, right? Of course, the real biggest problem of all this is, what is it you're trying to solve? If you're trying to keep people from shooting each other up, gun insurance isn't going to do anything for that. I mean, the person who's going down to the school to shoot it up doesn't care what's going to happen to his insurance premiums if he does so. It's not going to dissuade crime at all. Its only real purpose is to drive up the price of gun ownership. And again, as I said in Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, that's unconstitutional. Like my videos, subscribe to my channel.